Hey everyone, it's Allyson again with Shark Fin Shears. Today's cut that I want to show you all is going to be our April. April is one of my personal favorites. She is Shark Fin's take on a modern shag. So a couple of the buzzwords I want you to think about when you think of the April: lived in, textured, piecey, borderline messy, because we definitely want to have a style to this cut, but this cut is not about being polished. It's not about being smooth. This is a cut this is your wash and go, your wash and wear. When you have a client that says, I want to style my hair, but I don't want to spend time styling it. I want to have some length. I want it to be fun. This is the cut for you. So I like to call it our foolproof shag. This is a cut that if you are someone who has tried an attempt at a shag, who has feel like they have failed, that haven't just perfected it, this is going to be a way where you never have to worry about cutting a hole into your mullet, or your shag, I should say, to give you a mullet, right? Those surprise mullets in our shag cuts are never what we're looking for. So with this cut, you can see I have 1, 2, 3 clips, 3 sections. I do have a back section as well. That will be, go ahead, I left it unclipped because we're gonna do this section first. I'm actually gonna start the cut like this. So behind the chair, obviously in the salon, I'm going to be using my mirror. I'm going to have my client facing the mirror. For educational purposes, I'm obviously gonna do it this way. I would be standing directly in front of her, and this is a square layered haircut. The great thing about it being a square layer is whether I stand in front or I stand behind her with my body position staying square, it's going to be the same because we have a square, right? So what I'm going to do for my first subsection is I'm going to take diagonals, okay? This entire haircut is going to be a diagonal point cut. So you can see, and this is really important, with my subsectioning that I did, and I'll tilt her just so you can see, this is diagonal. Her sides will follow what I do up here, which is a horizontal, and her back will follow these. I'm going to section her down the center. And if you are someone like me that is afraid you may cut into a section that you don't want to cut into, just clip it off to the side because we do not need that hair there. It's out of the way, right? So taking my diagonal, I want to take my subsection no wider than my 2 fingers or my comb. My reason for that being is I want to be able to see my guide. I want to have control of my subsection, right? So the way to determine how long this haircut is, because again, we're going to be cutting our layers first, I want my first shortest layer to fall about 50% or halfway down the length of the hair. Well, how am I going to determine the length of her hair if this mannequin's hair is down to her back? Well, we know that a shag is not above the shoulders. It's not a classic bob length. A shag is below the shoulder, at the shoulder or below, essentially, right? You can have a really long shag. You can have a nice shoulder length shag. So we're going to take her, imagine she's got shoulders. We're going to take her probably right around like collarbone area. So if that's going to be my length, let's find something where we can use to tell me what that length is going to be. So let's say my length is here where I've got my little silver knob. So I want to drop this and see where that silver knob falls in my length. So I've got about, I'd say right about here is where I want that to go. So we want it to fall about here, which means I want it to sit right about there on the hair, right? So this entire haircut is going to be point cut. There are no straight blunt lines in this cut whatsoever. I'm going to remove essentially half of the hair from this subsection, and look, it's dried. Again, how we talked about in our other videos, and I'm sure if you are someone that works with mannequins regularly, you know the struggle of staying wet to about there, and then here's bone dry. So you always want to make sure that you are consistently re-wetting your hair. I can't stress it enough. It's going to have the world of difference. It's going to make the world of effect on your elasticity and your guide. So I'm going to comb this up, remove this hair because my tension is off, and I'm going to come here. I'm going to point cut. Now I'm not going to point cut directly at my fingers because point cutting at my fingers isn't point cutting. I'm just cutting a wonky guide. So I'm going to use my fine teeth. I'm going to come here and I'm going to point cut. When I point cut, you can see the amount of hair that I leave between my shear and my finger. My reason for doing that, 1, I need to see what I'm cutting. I need to see where that hair is. 2, if I'm cutting at my finger, what do we think the chances are of me cutting my finger? I'll let you guess. So let's bring the next part, again, of this diagonal piece. We're gonna cut straight across and we're gonna point cut. So if you just saw the amount of hair that I removed here versus the amount of hair I removed when I started, it's a huge difference. And you're probably thinking, well, why is that? This is where the diagonal comes into play. And you can see here, I wanna show you a perfect example. To me, it looked diagonal when I did it. That's borderline horizontal. Horizontal is gonna show weight, so I need to readjust and I need to take a true diagonal section. And I'm gonna do the exact same thing that I did. You can see there's my guide. Do you notice I don't even have any hair to cut on the outside? My reason for that being is the diagonal preserves length. So if I get to my last subsection, the very back, which is now her length, and I am taking out the same amount of hair that I took out at the very top at her crown, I know that there's a boo-boo somewhere, so I need to stop, take a deep breath, and figure out what happened. Go back and rework it. Start from the beginning and get in that haircut and see where I got lost in my translation. Again, take your clip, because now we're gonna cut her right side, and just clip out what you've already cut. This little piece right here, that's my guide, that's all I need. Set that to the side, and comb everything straight up. Bring that hair out. And there's my guide. Again, don't need all that hair, so we're gonna drop that out of the way. And then pick up the next piece that is part of the same subsection. I don't need any of that hair, so I'm gonna drop it. And again, we're gonna point cut. My swivel shear, you can see, I'm not cutting like this with my palm facing away. My wrist isn't kicked back. My elbow's down, my wrist is nice and straight. I could sit here and talk for hours about how I literally don't have carpal tunnel pain anymore. Like literally, I don't wear a brace anymore. I don't deal with, I don't know, I'm just gonna say 75% of the pain that I dealt with before behind the chair. And it's from a swivel and it's from a properly fit shear. It's gonna make the world of difference on your body and your cuts. So again, just that little bit, we're done. Comb everything up, because now again, we're getting to that last part of this subsection. And again, I should barely have anything to cut, literally, just those little stragglers. And if you feel like your ends are just a little too blunt, feel free to go in and just, point cut a little bit more to roughen them up, remove that weight. So our back is done. Believe it or not, that's it. That's the back of the cut. So right now, you don't really see a whole lot going on, and that's okay. Because again, it's the big picture. Trust the process. Don't get to your second subsection and say, well, I didn't do it right. Guess I'm not doing the cut right now. Start to finish, trust your process, and you'll do it. So now I'm gonna be cutting her sides. How we said in the back, I took diagonal partings. Well, on the top, depending on where you're looking, it's a horizontal. So what I'm going to do is take horizontal subsections all the way down. Like we did in other cuts with this collection, we're gonna over-direct. Over-direction is your friend or your worst enemy, depending on what you're using it for and if you know how to use it, right? So what I'm gonna do, again, taking small sections that are no wider than my comb or my 2 fingers, I'm gonna create a mohawk guide directly down the center. I am creating that guide, believe it or not, by using my guide from the back. So I know that might scare some of you because remember, your layering in a shag is really intense. There's so much layering going on. I promise short layers are supposed to be in this cut, so don't get scared if you're like, oh my gosh, where's all that hair? You're gonna love the way it looks. So we're gonna do, if you saw my other video with the Kristen, we talked about over direction. If I'm standing on her left, I'm cutting her right, vice versa. We're gonna do the same thing with this. Reason for that being, I wanna over direct everything to myself, and I also wanna use my mirror. We'll pretend you guys are my mirror, and make sure I'm over directing properly. It's very easy for me to think I'm over directing here. That's not over direction. Well, it is, but not where I want it to be. If I'm including this hair, but taking all this hair from the right, I wanna bring it straight up, so I'm bringing it to the left. Remember that over direction creates and also saves length. So if you want something to be long, over direct it. Now again, clipping off these back 2 areas that I have already cut. Don't need to cut those again. So I will take my subsection. Oh, that mannequin hair, you gotta love it. So you know what I'm gonna actually do is turn her for this part so we can see where I'm getting my guide. And again, this is straight, so I am not going to bring this to a 90. I am not following around of the head. It's straight and square, so we are bringing everything up straight. So there is my guide right there, and some of the hair that I haven't cut yet. So let's pick that piece up. So all that hair is going bye-bye. And if you get into your point cut and you're like, you know what, it just feels a little blunt, just point cut it some more. You can't point cut enough. So now we're gonna include a little bit of hair from my previous subsection. Again, we're just gonna cut square. I don't think I need to point out how awesome my swivel shears are at this very moment. I think everyone can kind of see it for themselves. So just that little guy, we'll just snip him. So that's good. This is my guide for both the left and the right. So again, I normally would not take such a big section. For education purposes, we are going to. Remember, no wider than your 2 fingers or your comb. And that does not mean go get a big wide comb and say, well, look at how big my comb is. This is how big my subsection can be. Remember, I taught cosmetology for years. I know all the tricks. So then we're gonna come here, and let's bring her now back to the center so you can really see that over direction, right? So we'll come here, and a word of advice, a nice little pro tip here, move her over. Take your comb and comb the hair directly to the spot that you wanna over direct, and then just comb straight up from that so you know that you are directing the hair where it needs to be. So we'll just take this piece of hair, comb it straight up, and point cut. And the great thing about this, so let's think about where we did our guide. We started our guide at the very back of the hair, right? Making sure we pick up another section that's not too big. We started it at the very back, we started it at the crown. That guide is gonna be our guide throughout the entire haircut. So let's say I am halfway through her side and I'm like, I don't know where my guide is. I don't know where to find the guide on the side of the haircut because I think I cut into it. Well, don't fret, because you know that you cut that guide at the crown. So you can go back into your haircut should you feel lost at any point and pick up where you left off. So now I am going to take the rest of the hair on the side of the head. This is scary because now we're talking parietal ridge area, right? So something that we need to take into consideration with our parietal ridge, what lies above it and what lies below it. Hair, right? That's all, just hair. Why is it so important? What does the parietal ridge matter? The parietal ridge is everything in hair cutting. Again, comb to that section, bring your fingers under, and you're there. So comb, tension, cut. Here. So above the parietal ridge, it's where your length can sit, depending on the haircut. Because think about it, you're doing a 1-length haircut, your length is sitting above the parietal ridge. You're not cutting any layers into it. Well, now, she's got so much hair, we're actually gonna split this section in 2. There we go. But now if you've got someone with shoulder length hair, that parietal ridge means everything to them. So above the parietal ridge can be length, but for the most part, that's gonna be your texture, your movement, your layers. Below your parietal ridge is your length. So anytime you bring up hair from here, right at her temple, you're below her parietal ridge. So keep in mind, if you cut too short, you're gonna affect her length. Not just her layers, but her length. So we've got our one side done. Now we're gonna go to the other side. I still have my back clipped just to be safe, and I'm gonna clip all of this, right? All I need, either a hair from here or a hair from the back, because now I have two guides that met at the same spot, and I know that they're correct on either side. So resaturate. And there we go. So again, I started with my fine teeth, I'm finishing with my fine teeth. Just how we talked about making sure that you're keeping the hair saturated because it's going to affect what? The elasticity. Your guide, it's gonna affect your length, all of that fun stuff. It's the same thing with the teeth of your comb. So we'll take this back little guide here, and we'll turn her so everyone can see. And again, I'm over directing to myself, to the opposite side. There is my guide right there. And I'm gonna show you, I don't recommend doing this, but I wanna show you this visual. So like your teachers, I'm sure, say, or everyone has heard in the salon, do as I say, not as I do. So this shows you shorter hair is stronger than longer hair. That hair was hanging, it was really heavy, it was pushing down. Well, now I know I'm cutting below this line to create those layers. Now I can see that hair because it's bumped up. So remember that shorter hair pushes longer hair. It's always going to be stronger. It's always going to create that movement that you're looking for. So now we move that forward because we're just continuing to follow that the mohawk guide that we have created. And that's done. So now let's over direct everything. Shouldn't say everything. We'll take it again into two subsections. Oh, there we go. So now we're bringing her straight up. She's got a ton of hair. Again, when you're dealing with long hair, and I know it happens, it's okay to just move the hair around. Use what you can. You know your strengths. You know what works best for you in a haircut. If you need 5 clips, use 5 clips. If you need 20 clips, use 20. Do what works for you. I am not here to judge. I'm just here to show you how to make your life easier when it comes to hair cutting. So again, point cut. Now the same thing can be said for the sides as was for the back. Meaning, if I get to here and I am cutting off the exact same amount that I cut off at the crown, sketchy. So bring here, again, she's got a ton of hair. Get that hair out of the way. Comb it to you, straight up, and point cut. One last one, straight to the center. And point cut. My cut's like 97% done if we count a fringe being only 3%. Depending on how bold your fringe is, it may only be a 3% fringe, or it could be a 75% fringe. That's up to you. So with the April, her fringe is a curtain fringe. These are classic. It's just your nice, soft, cascading. It gives, like the name, a curtain look, right? So what I'm gonna do, clip, once again, you already know, clip this hair out of the way. I'm gonna resaturate her fringe because it's been sitting in that clip for the longest, so I can only imagine how dry that is. If you have, pro tip number 2, you have someone where you need to spray around their face, rather than spraying their face or having them hold a towel, whatever it may be, take your comb and spray the fine teeth of your comb, and it will actually hold water. So you can comb around the face or comb the fringe and actually saturate their hair without saturating their face. So we'll take her here. Now remember, when hair is wet, it stretches. When it's dry, we can go back and take an inch off, but unless we want to start talking about extension services, we're not going to put it back on. So if you're cutting a fringe wet, go a little longer. It's okay because you can do that dry detail work at the end. So we're gonna take her fringe and put it into 3 vertical sections. So 1, 2, and 3, right? So we're gonna start at that high point. Let's turn her a little bit there. So we'll start at her highest point, taking a vertical. I'm just gonna take this hair and kind of get it out of the way for a moment. I'm not gonna clip it. I don't feel the need to clip it. Again, if you do, this is your haircut. This may be a cut that you're learning from shark fin, but when you do this cut, this is your cut. Do what works for you. Use the tools that work for you. Use 97 clips. Use 4 different sets of shark fin shears. Whatever works for you works for us. So we're gonna take this, we're gonna cut it at 0 degree elevation. Because remember, if I lift this, I'm now creating elevation. 0 degree. So we want it to be longer. We're gonna go ahead and do it, we'll do it right at the tip of her nose. Because again, the longer curtain fringe is really popular right now. So we'll go and we'll just point cut right here. Again, see the space that I am leaving between my finger and the shear. So that's my guide. You look at that and you think, how is that a guide for a fringe? Well, what has been the main theme? We've got one little straggler, so sorry guys, I just had to get that. The main theme of this, I feel like, has been over-direction in this collection. So imagine that, we're gonna over-direct. We're gonna over-direct opposites. So what I'm gonna do, now this is where I'm gonna clip the hair, because again, I'd rather be safe than sorry. Clip this out of the way. I'm gonna over-direct the left side of her fringe to the right side, using the guide that I have already created in the center. So what I'm gonna do, what it's gonna look like, I'm gonna take this fringe, I'm gonna use that longest piece right here as my guide. You see I have very low elevation, I'm not bringing it up here, I'm literally just bringing it across her face. So I take it, again, I started with my fine, I'm ending with my fine. I'm here, so you'll start to see my guide sits right there. Look for it in your comb because that's the guide you're cutting to. So there's my guide, I'll stop here. When people ask why I use a 7-inch shear, I feel like this is a perfect explanation why, and I don't have to go into any detail. So there's my one side, there's her one side of her curtain fringe, okay? Clip it because you've just cut this. I don't want to say you'd be upset, but imagine how upset you'd be if you cut everything you just did. Wouldn't it be pretty? So now we'll come over to this side and we'll do the same thing. Because remember, that theme of over-directing everything towards us still rings true for right now. So there's my guide, if you can see right there. Oh, that long hair right there. There's my guide. We cut to it. So now, if I've got, we can finally take, all of these clips out, toss them across the salon. She is free of clips, but now she's got this really long, weird fringe, right? So we want to have it cascading. Well, what do we do to get it to cascade? We've got a couple different options. You can, let's bring that fringe out. We can see it right there. You see the cascade shape it's already taken. So what I'll do is 2 different options just to show you how you can customize. So we can go in here and we can point cut. I can point cut this entire shape, just again, to make it soft, to still give it this look, to still give it that. Or if I'm someone that's more comfortable, or if I like to slide cut, which I love to slide cut, I can actually take it, and how I kept that same shape, I can slide cut here, and with my swivel, rather than slide cutting like this with my, my wrist all kicked back and all that fun jazz cutting like this, I can now flip that shear and slide cut like this. Look at my wrist, look at my elbow. I mean, it speaks for itself. And again, using my guide right there, and rather than point cutting, just slide cut. And it's gonna give you that same cascading shape, just a different option, right? So here's our April. I'm gonna show you how great her length, right? We said length is done. Excuse me, we said a haircut's almost done, length is not done. Because remember, length is last. So we've got our 2% fringe, we've got 1% length left, right? So her length is at her shoulders-ish, right? We said this is about her shoulder. So now let's really freak everyone out and just point cut and soften. Because think about the last time you did a length where you didn't have a whole lot of tension, not doing a whole lot of tension. So what I'm gonna do, I'm actually gonna bring her up. This is something that I really like to focus on, body position. I don't need to be down here if I can just move my mannequin. Same thing with a guest in your salon. The chair moves for a reason, lift it and rotate it. So I'll just use my comb here and I'm gonna start at her front. We'll use about this as her guide. Point cut, that's all I'm doing. I am doing this with my wide tooth. My reason for this being, it's her perimeter. Do I want to have a ton of tension on her perimeter? No. I could very well go through with no tension. It all depends on what I'm looking for and what I'm trying to achieve. So if she's someone, because this mannequin's super wavy, she's got beautiful movement and texture to her hair. Do I want to go in and do that to her length? No, absolutely not. So again, just lightly, you don't even have to comb all the way down because again, it's creating more tension. You can comb like just here and just use that to hold the hair in place to cut. Because again, this is a cut that we talked about. This is lived in. This is, hey, I just woke up, I'm going to get my coffee, my hair's done. This is that cut. So we've got layers, we've got movement, we've got a pretty shaggy April here, I would say, right? So to style this, I'm not using a round brush, I'm not using a flat iron, a curling iron, nothing. Using my hands, a spray wax, a texture powder. I would love to just take my clients and do this, but that's what we want to do with our hair, right? Stick your head upside down and just get messy, get crazy, right? This is a fun cut. The more you do nothing to it, essentially, the better it lives. So I hope this cut helped. I hope it took your shag game up a step or two. I hope it made sense. And above all else, I hope you have fun. Enjoy what you do, enjoy what we do. I hope you liked this. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, it's nice to be nice.